Have you ever wanted to buy a home because you've heard it's one of the easiest and fastest ways to become a millionaire? After all, somebody who is a tenant tends to have a net worth of around $5,500, but somebody who's a homeowner tends to have a net worth of around $170,000. Now, yes, that's not millionaire yet, but what if you could start as a homeowner and then over time become a landlord and own multiple properties? We're not talking gentrifying areas. We're talking about building your wealth by owning multiple properties over time and giving people a place to live and rent as they might want. Now, have you ever wondered, well, fine, Kevin, maybe I do want to become a millionaire landlord over time, but let's be real. If the median price of a home in America is just over $400,000, how am I ever going to be able to afford that? And when I do, how do I know that's actually going to be the property that I want to live in? What if I want more? Now, real estate may obviously seem out of reach if you're comparing to now wants versus potentially your ideal goal of becoming a millionaire. And so what if I told you there were two ways of thinking about real estate? One was the noob way and one was the pro way. For example, a noob might think, I gotta have 25% to save for a down payment before I can even get into real estate. I need to buy in an area with high cash flow so that when I rent out the property, I've got lots of passive income. And I need to buy something that's fixed up and inspected so that way I know the work has already been done. And ultimately, I need it to serve my needs as a family in the future. So maybe it'd be like a 4 or 5 bedroom house, maybe even with a pool that we'll start with. And of course, no HOAs, because who wants HOAs? And that way, since I know I'm not going to be in a position where I can make those determinations yet and actually have the money to do that for another 5 or 10 years, why would I even be remotely interested in getting started in real estate? Well, that's the way the noob speaks. The noob takes what they've learned from our school system about real estate and finance, nothing, and compares that to miscellaneous bits of information they've heard along the way, whether it's through the news, media, or social media. And they come to the conclusion that, you know what, this is too overwhelming, just not ready to buy a home. But the reality is, you can't blame anybody for thinking that way. After all, that's what America's taught. We've been taught that wait until you're ready, and wait until you've got your life figured out, and wait until you're stable, and wait until you have a spouse, and wait until all the stars align before you buy a home, because after all, that's a lot of debt. Well, the pro has a different mindset. The pro sees real estate debt as good debt and possibly one of the best risks you could ever take in your life, and really a risk you can heavily mitigate given that you're not just signing up for debt, you're signing up for real estate, which tends to be an appreciating asset over time. That is, the value of the property tends to go up over time. It tends to have an appreciating rent over time, which increases the amount of potential cash flow you could have out of that property since your payment tends to stay fixed. And the pro looks and says, look, sign me up for as much 30-year fixed rate debt on assets like that because the debt stays level, whereas your payment stays level. Your debt actually goes down over time. Your debt stays level and your potential cash flow and appreciated value goes up. And so over time, the pro knows that's what I want to take advantage of. That wedge in value that's created by paying off a loan over time when the cash flow from that asset actually goes up. So that's pretty high level. Let's now talk about some basics for how you might actually be able to start. And then once you get in, you tend to want to do it over and over again, because then your goal becomes, how many of those chart wedges can I grab and take advantage of to maximize my wealth over time? First, and this is a pretty easy one, pay your credit-related bills twice a month. Now, I'm not saying pay them off, and when I say credit-related, I mean anything that could affect your credit score. That could be your phone bill, credit card bills, water bill, you name it. Anything that shows up on your credit report. If you haven't run your credit report, do so. Just Google or go to Experian or go to Credit Karma and run your credit. Make sure you know what is on your credit report. You could also go to annualcreditreport.com and get a free credit report, #not sponsored. Any of these not sponsored. Now, I'm not saying pay off all your debt. Obviously, that is ideal, but it's easier said than done. Right now, if you start making a second payment on any credit-related account you have, then you'll start manipulating the algorithm, dare I say, to train your credit score to believe that you're on a new path of financial stability. That could actually boost your credit score with minimal change. All you're doing is making an extra small payment. Again, you don't have to pay it off. If you can pay it off, great, but make an extra payment. Get in that habit of paying your credit-related bills twice a month. Now, at bare minimum, it's almost impossible to be late on anything if you're making a payment twice a month. that will help you increase your credit score. And that's important when it comes to buying real estate. Anything over 740 is typically considered top tier premium rates, is what you'll end up getting with a 740 plus. Generally 740 is the cap, though some credit unions will take a 760 as a cap. And anything over 600 to 640 is usually that threshold where you want to be at minimum. So if there's a 5 in front, it's going to be a little bit tougher, but low 600s is possible to get into real estate. Now remember, the noob's always looking for perfection. The noob's like, how can I get passive income with an 850 credit score? The pro actually gets work done and realizes it's better to act than act perfectly, because acting perfectly usually means not acting. And the earlier you learn that the perfectionist is usually the one who's most unproductive, the quicker you'll start actually getting things done. Now that's not saying don't try hard, but it is saying get things done. And right now the goal is pump that credit score. After that, we look at your income. If it's less than $40,000 a year, we need to get that up. Now, easier said than done, we think, but not necessarily. The average salary for a starting level software engineer after a coding bootcamp is $66,000, and oftentimes could be much more. Starting salary for a registered nurse is $75K. For a realtor, even though that's commissioned and not salary-based, usually around $83K. Series 65 starting salary $74, licensed electrician $60. And we're not even talking about potentially running the business. Now, whatever income you have, ask your lender, that is, pick up the phone and call a local mortgage loan originator, somebody who's got great reviews. Stay away from the big banks. You want to go to smaller direct lenders or brokers and ask them, hey, I'm looking to buy a house. Can you qualify me based on my income from my job and Borders income? And ask for the requirements for Borders income. That will allow you to help qualify for a house based on you renting out 1 room or 2 rooms, and now you can leverage your job and that you're renting out rooms to qualify for a home to supplement what you can qualify for. Now, when it comes to non-housing debt, you really want to stay away from it. Don't finance the refrigerator or the couch. Don't finance anything you don't have to finance. Reason for that is every $1 of non-real estate debt you have, which the pro calls bad debt, the pro only likes good debt, which is generally real estate debt, debt that makes you money over time. Every $1 you have of monthly payments on bad debt, again, refrigerators, cars, any kind of monthly payments that show up on your credit report, robs you of about $2.34 of purchasing power in payments for a house. This is called the rule of 234. So if you have $1,000 of debt, the payments you can afford on a house falls by $2,340. That's more than twice the amount of the payment you're making on, be it that car or whatever it is that in together you're making payments on. Yeah, the same is true for many student loans, but talk to your lender about that. Now, not only are you losing that cash every month to a depreciating asset, to something that is bad debt, but it destroys your ability to actually gain wealth with good debt. So you fall into a black hole. Now, the pro knows good debt is real estate, the kind of debt you generally don't focus on paying off. It's actually the kind of debt that lets you leverage in a relatively safe way, building wealth. Now, you can build wealth with just cash, but it takes a lot longer and it's a lot slower. Now, I teach exactly how to do all of this in substantial detail, in detail that's probably 100 times as detailed as this overview video, in my programs on Building Your Wealth, linked down below. Pay specific attention to that 0 to Millionaire real estate investing course. But let's talk about why you want to hold real estate and ideally hold it forever. And then let's talk about what to buy. So the reason you want to hold real estate ideally forever is A, avoid those expensive selling fees of 7 to 10% once you factor in repair costs and the time it takes to actually sell a property, plus commissions and escrow and title, all that good stuff. But you also have to pay taxes, and you ideally want to avoid paying taxes because then your wealth will be greater. Now, with real estate, if you do sell, you can do a 1031 exchange, which is a way of deferring your taxes. You're calling up the IRS and saying, hey, I'll catch you later. But ultimately, you'd still be paying taxes if eventually you sell, right? Well, not necessarily. See, the beautiful thing about real estate is you can build up your portfolio, and then when you need money, access to capital, you can refinance your real estate and then buy potentially more real estate or finance whatever it is you might necessarily need to finance. And when you take debt out of real estate, you don't pay any taxes. And at some point in the future, when your time in this video game simulation is up, you could pass those properties on to your children tax-free via that stepped-up tax basis, which is phenomenal. Now, what do you want to start with? Well, usually you want to do as the pro does. Start with a basic 3-bedroom, 2-bath. Something that needs a little bit of cosmetic fixing up, but isn't something that's completely trashed and has expensive repairs needed like a roof or a foundation. You want something in a great area that you can easily do some paint, wallpaper removal, and carpet work on. That's it. Ideally, stay away from additions, stay away from high-tension power lines and busy streets, focus on just some cosmetics that you have to do, and follow the red flags. If your home inspector identifies some red flags, call the appropriate contractor. Let your realtor help guide you. Hey, they saw this on the report regarding electrical work. Meet with a couple different electricians and get their professional opinion on what the actual cost of that potential issue is. And then you could always have a discussion with the seller as well. Now, some noobs might say, well, if you have to rent out the home, you better hope it cash flows. But remember that cash flowing real estate, while it's phenomenal, generally takes a down payment of between 20 to 35%. And some areas cash flow more than other areas. Now, not only are you going to have less cash flow if you put down less money, so if you put down 3 or 5%, you'll probably be negative. But the way to look at that is kind of like DCAing into real estate. Yeah, you'll have a slight negative, but you're dollar cost averaging into real estate to get up to that 20, 25, 30% down payment where you would experience a cash flow. And you can get there over time. And by getting there with an appreciated home value, you can also eventually get rid of mortgage insurance. Usually people do the math, go, I don't want mortgage insurance, I'll have to pay that for 30 years. Nobody pays mortgage insurance for 30 years. Most people apply to get rid of mortgage insurance within 2 or 3 years. It's not a big deal. But look into the rules of what it would take to get rid of mortgage insurance when you go buy a property. Now, with that said, it's absolutely important to remember you're not flipping real estate here. Think about it like slowly acquiring and building real estate. Your goal isn't passive income tomorrow. Your goal is passive income when you're 40, 50, 60, 70. So if you're starting when you're 20, you've got a huge head start here. It's okay to have a slight negative as long as you're confident in the stability of your job or your ability to get another job. So leverage in. Now, final rule of thumb. Buy in areas where you would feel safe doing a Craigslist transaction at 9 o'clock at night. If you are asked, hey, come meet me down this particular street at 9 o'clock and I'll give you cash for that thing you're selling, you probably don't want to buy real estate there if your first reaction is, can we meet somewhere more populated or a little safer? That's where you don't want to buy real estate. You want to buy real estate where when somebody says, hey, want to meet up in this area? You're like, that's like the safest part of the city. I don't even think about safety in that area. That's usually where you want to buy. You want to buy where there are a lot of homeowners and few renters. That way you can be surrounded and have your property surrounded by a lot of homeowners. So what does the noob do? The noob waits to buy real estate. The pro buys real estate, fixes it up, and then waits. The pro buys in quality areas. The noob gives all the reasons why they can't. They don't feel like they have the down payment. They don't think they're ready. They don't have the spouse. They don't have all of the objections that they can give. They give a reason for why they shouldn't buy real estate. But you as a pro in the making want to avoid all that. So with that said, check out the program's link down below. We'll see you in the next Noob vs. Pro.